They were bullied, threatened, and trapped. But just when hope seemed lost, a twist of fate and a brilliant lawyer exposed the hidden truth, sending the house of cards tumbling and leaving victory where it least expected, on the foundation of stolen land. 1973 marked a turning point for my parents. Armed with years of diligent saving and unwavering determination, they embarked on the ambitious project of building their own home, a modest ranch house nestled in the embrace of the countryside. The local bank, recognizing their financial prudence and commitment, extended a helping hand in the form of a mortgage. This crucial piece of paper, signed with a swirl of Mr. Henderson's pen, wasn't simply a financial agreement. It was a testament to their hard work and the promise of a brighter future. However, the contract did hold a curious detail. The recipient of the loan wasn't my parents, but a contractor named Bob, the architect of their dreams, whose skilled hands would translate their blueprints into a tangible haven. Thus, with a mixture of anticipation and trust, they awaited Bob's arrival, ready to witness the transformation of their hopes into a sturdy, sun-drenched reality. Bob, a maestro of chaos by all accounts, had ballooned his workload into a monstrous symphony of double, triple, and quadruple bookings. While he waltzed from project to project, a deluded Pied Piper leading a flock of hapless contractors, his build devolved into a Sisyphean nightmare. Days spiraled into weeks, then months, as the edifice groaned under the weight of its own shoddy foundations and repeated demolitions. Forget misplaced light fixtures or off-kilter trim. This disaster was an ode to architectural absurdism. Imagine, if you can, a misplaced zero in the blueprints birthing a wall smack through the planned jacuzzi, rendering it more trench warfare obstacle than luxurious soak. Or picture Mom, aghast, staring at kitchen cabinets dangling by a thread of roofing nails hammered into drywall, where studs dared not tread. And the grand finale. The garage door, a misplaced portal, opening not onto the liberating driveway, but directly into the bewildered heart of the living room. Each day brought a fresh chorus of groans and curses as Bob's minions, bless their patient souls, untangled the spaghetti of errors. It was a construction site turned slapstick comedy, a Piranesi etching come to life, where walls sprouted like unwanted weeds and gravity held a tenuous grip on everything from cabinets to dreams. An unsettling silence hung heavy in the air as Mr. Perkins, the bank's stern-faced representative, marched towards the ramshackle farmhouse. He scanned the overgrown yard, his eyes landing on Bob, the contractor, a sheepish grin plastered on his face. Perkins knew a shoddy job when he saw one, and a knot of anger began to tighten in his gut. The bank had entrusted Bob with a hefty sum to renovate the property, and this shoddy, half-finished mess was all they had to show for it. Reaching the front porch, Perkins found my parents, their faces etched with a mixture of defiance and weary disappointment. He delivered his verdict, voice cold and clipped. "This property is demonstrably not up to code. I cannot, in good conscience, approve the final payment." Bob sputtered, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. But everything's fine. Just a few finishing touches." His pleas fell on deaf ears. My father, voice steely, backed his mother as she firmly declared, "We will not sign off on this disaster. Our home is not your gamble, Mr. Perkins." Fury contorted Perkins' features. He had dealt with disgruntled clients before, but this defiance, this audacity, was intolerable. In a fit of pique, he stormed towards the front door, intending to force his way through. Reaching for the knob, he yanked with all his might. And then silence. A stunned silence as the world seemed to tilt sideways. The door, instead of swinging open, simply gave way. Not splintered, not cracked, but dissolved. Casing, frame, everything came loose with a groan of tortured wood, and Mr. Perkins found himself sprawled, half buried in a cascade of rotting timber. He scrambled up, coughing and spitting sawdust, eyes wide with disbelief. My parents stood frozen, shock momentarily replacing their anger. Bob, ever the opportunist, let out a nervous chuckle. Maybe we should discuss this inside." The scene, surreal and unexpected, had momentarily diffused the tension. In that bizarre limbo, the power dynamic had shifted. The arrogant bank representative, now humbled and ridiculous, lay sprawled amongst the ruins of his own inflated expectations. Bob's shoddy work was laid bare, a monument to his deceit. And my parents, standing tall amongst the wreckage, their voices now echoing with newfound resolve, were no longer mere victims, but unwilling guardians of their shattered home. This was no longer just a dispute over a shoddy repair job. It was a stark illustration of the precariousness of trust and the consequences of deceit. The crumbled door was a metaphor for the fragile veneer of Bob's work, and the unexpected fall, a symbol of the bank's arrogance brought crashing down. It was a scene that lingered, a memory etched into the mind, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come not from brute force, but from the quiet resilience of standing your ground. The ringing phone pierced the oppressive quiet of the rental, a beacon of urgency in the drabness. It was the bank, summoning Bob, the contractor whose promises of a new home had begun to resemble mirages in a cruel desert. He finally graced our unfinished house with his presence, but his arrival served as only a bitter confirmation of our mounting fears. Bob, it turned out, was no virtuoso conductor of bricks and mortar. He was merely a slightly more polished version of his bumbling orchestra of incompetent underlings. Despite this glaring evidence of shoddy workmanship, my parents, clinging to the fading dream of their own haven, refused to sign off on the house. My mother, a stay-at-home mom with two rambunctious toddlers underfoot, found herself trapped in the squalor of the rental, a prison built of broken promises and mounting anxieties. Meanwhile, my father, his face etched with exhaustion from working two jobs to fuel this impossible dream, shouldered the brunt of the bank's relentless pressure. Throughout this ordeal, the bank and Bob, united in their callous disregard, engaged in a symphony of deception. My mother, the ever-resilient heart of our family, became the target of their bullying tactics, while my father was bombarded with a barrage of lies and half-truths. What should have been a joyous milestone, the culmination of years of yearning and planning, had become a twisted parody of itself. The air in our home, both the rental and the unfinished one, grew thick with despair. My mother, her spirit wounded, retreated into a world of tear-stained tissues and silent prayers. My father, his optimism eroded by endless frustrations, began to succumb to the shadows of depression. The weight of despair hung heavy in the air as the final, crushing blows landed. The bank, a leviathan of cold stone and legal jargon, loomed with the threat of foreclosure. Simultaneously, Bob, the contractor, gnawed at their dwindling resources with the gnashing teeth of a lawsuit for breach of contract. These twin nightmares, fueled by faulty plumbing, rogue wiring, and shoddy tiling, had transformed their dream home into a crumbling monument to misfortune. Exhausted and defeated, my parents trudged through the lawyer's door, their shoulders slumped beneath the weight of mounting anxieties. They laid bare the sorry saga. The leaky faucets weeping tears of waste, the flickering lights dancing a macabre waltz, the uneven tiles mocking their shattered hopes. Fear, sharp and primal, gnawed at their insides. Their sole defense, a meager down payment saved with sweat and sacrifice, stood pale against the formidable forces arrayed against them. A protracted legal battle, they knew, would drain their coffers and leave them defenseless, ripe for the picking by both the bank and Bob. A flicker of unease crossed Dad's face as Tom, the lawyer, meticulously organized the mountain of paperwork. Even his reassuring smile seemed strained. Meeting tomorrow, he declared, breaking the silence. His voice, though gentle, held a hidden edge. The next day, the conference room at the bank buzzed with nervous energy. My parents, pale and drawn, sat opposite Tom, flanked by the imposing figures of the bank's representative and his ruthless attorney, Bob. Bob's predatory gaze fixed on Dad, who squirmed under the scrutiny. Tom cleared his throat. "My clients have reached a decision," he announced. The room held its breath. "They want the house. Gone." A burst of disbelieving laughter erupted. "Removed. Are you serious?" The bank's representative sputtered, indignation coloring his cheeks. With a flourish, Tom slammed a deed onto the table. "The land, gentlemen, belongs to my clients. The house, unfortunately, does not." His voice, cold and precise, sliced through the room like a scalpel. Bob's eyes flickered from the deed to his cowering client. "Built a house on someone else's land," he muttered, incredulity lacing his voice. The bank's representative paled further, eyes darting between Bob and the irate Tom. I, we didn't know about the land ownership, he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. Tom's smile vanished, replaced by a steely glint. Trespassers, then. My clients demand the house removed, the land restored, immediately. His words hung heavy in the air, a grim ultimatum. The once bustling room sank into a shocked silence. My parents exchanged a look, a mixture of despair and defiance flickering in their eyes. The meeting that was supposed to offer salvation had become a descent into a legal nightmare, and the weight of their predicament settled like a vice on their shoulders. The blank stares etched themselves onto my father's memory, a chilling tableau frozen in time. The bank, faced with a monstrously flawed investment, could foreclose on a house destined to vanish by week's end. A cruel joke of a property, built on borrowed land, would leave them holding the empty bag. No bricks, no mortar, just the echoing void of lost millions. My father, Bob, bore the brunt of the nightmare. Out of pocket, his 50% evaporated, swallowed by the quicksand of a botched deal. Worse, he was tethered to the wreckage, shackled with the responsibility of demolishing this phantom house and clearing the land. As if that wasn't enough, the bank, with unmitigated audacity, craved the blood that it already drawn. They expected him to cough up the 50% they'd initially loaned him, a second sacrificial lamb offered to their insatiable appetite for recompense. The bank, though, held the trump card, my parents. Foreclosure, a venomous word dripping with the promise of ruined credit, hung over their heads like a Damocles sword. The deposit, their hard-earned nest egg, could vanish in a puff of legal smoke. Yet accepting the house in its state was no panacea. It was a crumbling monument to negligence, a bottomless pit demanding thousands upon thousands to replace its dilapidated roof, its rotting innards, every crooked floorboard groaning under the weight of unseen decay. This wasn't a home, it was a condemned building, a financial black hole disguised as a dream. But the bank knew that. They, after all, were the puppet masters who had orchestrated this macabre charade. They were the ones who, with a practiced sleight of hand, had conjured a mirage of financial stability, all the while knowing the foundation was built on sand. This wasn't just a foreclosure, it was a grotesque display of power imbalances, a stark reminder of the precarious dance between desperation and deceit. My father, caught in the crossfire, faced the consequences of a system as crooked as the house itself. The blank stares around the table weren't just a reflection of shock. They were a silent echo of a broken system, a chilling reminder that sometimes the ones holding the purse strings hold the fate of others in their icy grip. The tide had turned. Suddenly, the bank and Bob transformed from adversaries into eager allies. Misunderstandings dissolved, replaced by a flurry of apologies and promises. The bank's rep, who'd fumbled the process from the start, was shown the door. With Bob taking the financial helm, the house underwent a metamorphosis. Original blueprints, long forgotten due to budget constraints, sprung back to life. Skilled craftsmen materialized, wielding hammers and drills to materialize Bob's vision. All at no additional cost to my parents, though the burden sat heavily on Bob's shoulders. Finally, the day arrived. Mortgage papers rustled under my parents' eager signatures, marking the end of their ordeal and the beginning of their dream home. Bob, having poured his heart and soul into the project, watched with a bittersweet smile. He'd broken even financially, but the satisfaction of a job well done, of righting a wrong, far outweighed any monetary loss. For Tom, this wasn't just another case closed. It was a legal epic, a saga of tenacity and unwavering loyalty. He held his head high, knowing his dedication had secured not just a victory, but a second chance for my family. And when he regaled his fellow attorneys with the tale of his client's triumphant homecoming, a whisper of awe would always fill the room. This, they knew, was what justice truly looked like.